At first, nobody noticed, which is often how these things begin, not with resistance, not with commentary, but with the soft invisibility of someone simply doing what they were told to do. The man arrived on time, not early enough to be praised, not late enough to be remarked upon, just on time. He hung his coat on the same hook each morning, nodded politely to whoever happened to be near the kettle, and sat down at his desk without ceremony. His work was neat, consistent, predictable in a way that made managers quietly relieved and colleagues vaguely forgetful. If anyone had been asked about him in those early weeks, they would have said the same thing. Oh, he's fine. And they would have meant it, because he was. He worked steadily through the morning. He didn't scroll, didn't wander, didn't sigh dramatically or stretch tasks into theatrical marathons of importance. Emails were answered, reports were completed, files moved from one digital folder to another with the quiet efficiency of someone who understood exactly what his role required, and no more. At 10:30 each morning he stood up, not abruptly, not apologetically, just stood. He walked to the small staff kitchen, filled the kettle, and made himself a cup of tea. Then he sat at the little round table by the window and drank it. Not at his desk, at the table. The first few times no one paid much attention. People were busy. People are always busy, or at least always performing the appearance of being busy, which in many workplaces has long since become the more important skill. But habits, once established, begin to draw the eye. By the third week, someone noticed the timing. "He always goes at 10:30, whispered Carol from accounts, not unkindly, just with the mild curiosity of someone who has spotted a pattern and doesn't yet know what to do with it. "Does he?" someone else replied, already half looking back at their screen. He did, every morning, 10:30, cup of tea, table by the window. And then, and this was the part that would slowly begin to itch under the skin of the office, he stayed there. Not for long, but for the full 10 minutes allocated in the employee handbook under the very uncontroversial heading, Morning Break, 10 minutes. He took all of them. It was not in itself a problem. No policy was being violated. No deadlines were missed. No complaints had been filed. If anything, his work remained stubbornly competent, arriving on supervisor's desk complete, on time, and free from the small frantic errors that often accompanied the office's more visibly hardworking employees. But discomfort, when it comes, rarely announces itself through policy. It arrives through feeling. And the feeling slowly spreading through the room was this: he didn't seem rushed enough. By the second month, the noticing had sharpened. People began to observe him in the small reflective surfaces of office life, in the microwave door, in the black screen of sleeping monitors, in the brief lifted glances that were quickly disguised as something else. He worked, yes, no one could deny that, but he didn't strain. He didn't hunch forward with the familiar posture of quiet martyrdom. He didn't sigh heavily into emails. He didn't make the small public performances of overwhelm that had become, over the years, the office's unofficial dialect of dedication. Most unusually of all, he left at 5, not 5:03, not 5:15, 5. His computer shut down, his chair slid in, his coat came off the hook. He walked out with the same calm neutrality with which he had arrived. At first, people assumed it was temporary. "He's probably new," someone said. "He'll settle in," because everyone knew, without ever having formally agreed, that leaving exactly on time was something one did carefully, occasionally, with explanation, not daily, not comfortably. By the third month, the irritation had begun. It wasn't spoken loudly. Offices rarely work that way. Instead, it appeared in the small sideways comments that float just above the level of accusation. Must be nice. That's one way to do it. I suppose some people are just very efficient. None of it was directed at him, not directly, but the air had shifted. The room had begun to reorganize itself around the quiet disruption of his normality. Because that was the unsettling thing. He wasn't lazy. If he had been lazy, the story would have been simpler, cleaner. There would have been forms to fill out, performance reviews to schedule, sympathetic but firm conversations in small glass meeting rooms. But he wasn't. His work was solid, dependable, quietly complete, which left only one problem. He was not performing the correct level of visible effort. One Thursday afternoon it finally surfaced. Not dramatically, not with confrontation, just with the careful politeness that offices specialize in when they are about to say something that isn't really about what they are saying. His manager appeared beside his desk. Got a minute? He looked up. Of course. They sat in the small meeting room, the one with the slightly overwatered plant and a chair that always rolled half an inch when you shifted your weight. The manager smiled, the professional smile, the one that arrives before the soft phrasing of a not quite complaint. You're doing good work, she began, and he nodded because that part at least was true. We've just had some feedback. There it was, the soft collective voice of the room, now giving a single polite mouth. He waited. Well, she continued carefully, some of the team have mentioned that you seem very quick with your tasks. He considered this. I complete what's assigned. Yes, absolutely, she said quickly, and that's appreciated. It's just sometimes it can be helpful to show a bit more presence. There was a small silence, not uncomfortable, just precise. What would that look like? He asked. And for the first time in the conversation, she hesitated, because that was the difficult part. There was no line in the handbook that said, employees must appear appropriately strained. No official metric for the subtle theatre of modern work. The carefully calibrated size, the strategic late departures, the visible busyness that so often stands in for measurable contribution. What they were asking for did not exist on paper, only in culture. Well, she said finally, choosing each word as if stepping across a shallow stream. Sometimes staying a little later or being more visibly engaged with the team can help with overall perception. Perception. There it was. Not output, not quality, perception. He nodded slowly. I see. And the meeting ended the way these meetings always end. Politely, professionally, with nothing formally wrong and everything subtly altered. The next morning at 10:30 he stood up. He walked to the kitchen. He made his tea, and he sat by the window for the full 10 minutes. Which leaves the question hanging, not inside the story, but outside it. With you. When did doing the job stop being enough? And when did looking tired become part of the work? And when someone stops performing busyness, why does it make everyone else uncomfortable?